Boss, can we start? Yes. We have a green light, so let's start. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Great to see everybody here. My name is Ilya Ponomarev. I represent Congress of People's Deputies, who don't. That just concluded. It was a fascinating event. This year it was probably was the most interesting that I have visited in my life. So and we anticipated something like this. That's why we decided to make a panel which is dedicated to Davos. And I want this to be more interactive than usual. So I will first speak about my impressions and what we were doing and what I personally saw, and how I take what I saw. But I would really like you to ask questions, and so that we go in depth for something which is more interesting for you. So, well, first of all, what is Davos? You know, it's not everybody here was at Davos. Davos is a village in the mountains of Switzerland, a pretty small one. It's a pretty good ski resort. Not the best. Where Thomas Mann once wrote one of his most famous books, you know, living in Switzerland mountains. And why I'm telling you is because I just learned it, because one of our events that my company was organizing was at the place where he did it. So that's where I learned it. But in general, for this week of World Economic Forum, the whole village becomes one big forum place. What you would expect in the village, you know, converted, and the either national houses, the house of Ukraine, the house of Indonesia, the house of Brazil, and the houses of companies that want to present themselves for a certain reason. Frankly speaking, most of the companies which have their own houses there, I have no clue why they decided to make their houses. Because I don't see much of a marketing value besides like just spending marketing budget. But some of them actually doing very interesting programs. And in general, that's the place to mingle. So the whole crowd moves from one house to another throughout these whole 5 days, and they have parties, and they have panels, and they have meetings. And to my personal opinion, that's the best place to mingle worldwide that you can ever have, because you know all of the business elites and many of the representatives of political elites, they gather in Davos, and that's the place where you can very easily talk to a president of a country, you know, to the leaders of the top businesses, you know, which would never talk, even dare to talk to you, you know, at the regular circumstances. They are all within literally hands reach, and that's extremely useful. That's why people are coming to Davos. At the same time, it's not like traditional forum where you need to kind of buy a ticket, a registration. Like in theory, yes, and it's a large business because I don't know this year what the ticket price was, but it's definitely above $50,000 a ticket. So that's like to give you an idea. But among everybody who's coming there, I doubt that more than 10% of visitors actually ever bought a ticket. Because you don't need one if you don't go to the Belvedere Hotel where the plenary sessions are. And most people don't, you know, it usually doesn't make any sense. And the venue there is not large, and in the Belvedere. So people come there to mingle. They don't come just to sit in the audience and to was the case, because there would be a person like, I don't know, Bill Gates or Jack Ma or, you know, some other leader of the global industry would come and say something important. This time, only political leaders. And that's what made this Davos so special. Obviously, it started of marketing from Canada, which to me middle tier countries united, something that can compete to the Marxist manifesto of the 19th century. There's like New World Order is coming, and only by staying united, like, we can counterbalance the rule of force that is being promoted primarily by the United States. He didn't say this, but it was clear, you know, who he meant. And when you say, like, we need to defend ourselves, it was also clear whom he meant to defend against. Then obviously it was Trump's speech. And I really feel sorry for people who were at the plenary session when Trump was speaking, because they couldn't show any emotions. And I saw those emotions in Ukrainian house. I was not in the plenary session at that time, but I was in Ukrainian house, and, you know, everything was shut down for Trump's speech. And there was a crowd of, I don't know, like 200 people, and they were interacting with Trump. It was an entertaining experience, I can tell you. That's also very unusual, because I never saw anything like this before. And then was Zelensky's speech, which to me was not in dialogue with what Trump has said. It was rather a dialogue to what Vance has said at the Munich Security Forum a year ago. Because Vance was appealing to Europe, and with a lot of bitter words, Trump was theoretically also appealing to Europe, but he, as always, was appealing only to himself at the end of the day, and was talking about his own policies, his own views, you know, his own agenda. So he was not that much in the dialogue. But Vance, 1 year ago in the Munich Security Forum, he was debating with European policies, and Zelensky was debating with European policies. And I think that it's probably the first time when Zelensky could be so open in what he was saying because of Trump. Because he could offset that previous speech. He was obviously not debating with Trump directly, but at the same time, it was like two different agendas offered to Europeans. And if Canadians were kind of saying about a certain class of countries, you can say it's G20 -1 or -2 if you take China as well. Then Zelensky was particularly appealing to Europeans. And that very much reflects what's happening in Ukraine right now. Because Ukrainians, they all feel that they need to be in a dialogue with the United States, because it's about the peace process, and it's about the possible negotiations with Russia. And anyway, it's it's the United States who are the trendsetters globally, but at the same time that the real friends are in Europe, and that Ukraine needs to partner with Europeans. And in many sense, Ukraine is partnering with Europe to promote agenda which is alternative to the agenda which is promoted to the modern days United States. And that's what Zelensky was speaking about during his speech, which I also obviously don't want to repeat. But if you'd like, you can watch it online. It's definitely worth it, as well as definitely Trump's speech is worth listening to. and Canadian speeches also, I think, is very much relevant. So to me, these three speeches are extremely relevant. Lastly, to say about my personal impressions, which are more kind of local and more relevant to what I personally am doing recently, is that a lot of discussions were around security concerns, defense concerns, future of NATO, future of European, the possibility of a new war in Europe with Russia, and how Europe can defend itself, and what is the future of NATO from the technological point of view in terms of defense technologies. And here, obviously, Ukrainians were in high demand. And I would say that this Davos actually highlighted a very important and, to me, very positive shift with the perception of Ukraine that was there a year ago. Because a year ago, Ukraine was perceived as the country which suffers, society that suffers, as people who need to be helped. They're not orphaned, but, you know, poor guys. This year, this narrative also obviously was present in numerous speeches and in numerous people's opinions, but I saw very strong trend in seeing Ukraine as a defense partner, as actually a source of the new technologies. And you know, Ukrainians were joking for a very long time already, since 2022. You know, we like to brag always, like that's our nature. And there's a very popular joke that it's not Ukraine who should join NATO, but it's NATO who should join Ukraine. You know, that it's not us who need the security guarantees, but it's them who need the security guarantees. That it's not us who should ask for them, it should be us who are providing them. But, you know, this is the first year when it's no longer a joke. And especially Eastern Europeans, the Baltic states, Poland, you know, those countries, in the situation of this vacuum of power that emerges in relation to the changes of the US foreign policies and defense policies, actually those countries are very much asking for some sort of a regional defense alliance. And that was also what Zelensky was targeting to, hinting all the time. And I think that's the way the situation actually develops these days. I don't know whether it would materialize during 2026. Most likely not. Europeans are very slow. It's very bureaucratic. But I think that's the way situation goes to. And this Davos was a very powerful indicator for this. So with this, I would like to conclude on the monologue, and let's come more to the dialogue phase and what you would like to hear. I am dying to see your questions. Please. Take just the mic, because we need your question to be heard. It's for the broadcast.
Thank you, Matthias Smetman. I appreciate that overview and the synopsis of the meetings. The one word that I didn't hear you mention was Greenland, which was obviously a very big focus, in particular about the relationship with the United States and the NATO countries, the European countries. What was your takeaway in terms of how this might impact the war in Ukraine, given that this is basically an issue that Putin would have supported because it promotes disunity and fracturing the European alliance? And even in President Trump's remarks himself, he said basically Ukraine is a European problem. It's up to implying it's up to the Europeans to resolve it. So kind of your impression on whether or not the issue of Greenland has actually fractured NATO more and made it more difficult, or it makes it easier for the Europeans to unite and say, we want to support Ukraine, or whether it's going to be more difficult to do so without the U.S. engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. Yeah, and I sorry that I missed this elephant in the room during my presentation. You know, this big piece of ice. Yes. You know.
Iceland. Yeah.
Yes. Uh, mm, you see, my take is the following: that there is a reality and there is a perception. In reality, I think nothing would happen to Greenland. And I think that very much everything was happening, you know, all this rhetorics and stuff. I take it more as a PR stunt, as a campaign by the president. What he wants to achieve primarily, I don't know. It's probably more internal for the U.S. policies. You know, we have midterms coming, you know, stuff like that. But at the same time, everybody whom I'm speaking to in the administration, they all say that President Trump is very much afraid now, after especially Venezuela, to do something that would be seen at, you know, with the background of Venezuela as not so smooth operation. That's why I never believed in any military operation in the Ukraine, and I don't believe it now, even less than it was before. But at the same time, yeah, he wants some place in history, and if that would be something that is related to Greenland, you know, that's one of the things that that would be interesting to him personally, you know. And he now not so much believes in the Nobel Peace Prize, what was his main idea during 2025. Now his idea is about Greenland, but I think it would die more or less in the same fashion, like the Nobel Peace Prize. Nobel Peace Prize was satisfied with Machado giving him the medal, and I think that is nothing against President Trump, just his character, you know. It's like, and we just need to live with it. With Greenland, I think that what actually was announced on Davos, there would be, you know, a little bit more increased sovereignty over the territories where the military bases already stand. Um, uh, and then, you know, President Trump was, I think, 100% right when he was saying about what was going on during World War II. During World War II, Greenland de facto was a part of US territory. It was defended by the United States. And that's why in the 40s, if I'm not mistaken, like 1948 or 1949, there was an agreement signed with Denmark over Greenland, which actually set up the way those military bases were created, maintained, and basically, according to those agreements, the United States can do whatever they want. You want to build an air base there, you can do it. You want to build a port facility, you can do it. You know, you can, if you want to harvest, I don't know, critical materials. At that time there was no such words, but you want to do something, you know, around those bases, you can do it. You know, nothing prevents it. So it was a very powerful agreement already. And I actually don't see what can be demanded more than what's already there. That's why I think it would be very easy to satisfy. I think it's a high probability that would cost American taxpayers some money. But there would be no fundamental changes at the end of the day, but there would be a possibility to announce something, and that would be it. And that's the reality. But the perception is disastrous. Because the perception is that there is a split within NATO. Russians are applauding, and you know, Denmark and the United States, you know, one step away from the military conflict. The NATO may perish after this. You know, this kind of stuff. For Ukrainians, again, it's a source of gazillion jokes, because Denmark, for Ukraine, is the key military partner, and now some of the drones that are being used in Ukraine are being produced in Denmark. Denmark is a major investor in Ukraine drones industry, actually #1. So it would be fun to watch these territories being protected by Ukrainian drones, and to see how U.S. Army can actually combat this. But I don't think that would ever happen. But nevertheless, people are worried. The word Greenland, you could hear in Davos, well, basically I heard it every single hour. It was like joke number one. And I very much pray that it remains a joke, that there would be nothing substantial. But as what many things that Trump is doing, I think it would be the bottom line would be very positive for the humanity. Sorry for this pathos, because I think that the security regime in Arctics needs to be discussed. I think it needs to be revised. I think the attention towards Arctics was growing over recent years, but not to the speed which actually is being dictated by, ironically, because President Trump denies it, global warming, which makes Arctics more usable in the commercial sense, as much as in the security sense. And because of this, yes, I'm sorry for giving such a long answer, and I'm concluding. I think that this discussion would actually inspire changes which are long time overdue for all of us. And obviously, I think that it's a reality that the current regime, when there are those sectors of influence, and that was the idea which initially was introduced by Stalin, because it's against
Venezuela, Mr. Trump, but I thought a similar thing was done by George Bush's father, I mean the older George Bush, who not only invaded Panama, kidnapped Noriega. Kidnapping. Land. Mr. Trump claims that he's got a commitment now to take over some key critical places, which is as good as taking it over. That's what he's claiming, and some Europeans like Rutter.
so many people live there, so you can
Right.
kidnap everybody. So it's like no problem.
And make them American citizen. He said now there's no Greenlanders anymore. Anyway, I was just so given all the you talked about Davos, and I would like to call it Dumbos, how to name it. Whose would you have on Mr. Trump's, Carney's, or Zelensky providing you a flight to the United States?
Just pass it like yeah. So look, I don't even know like how to comment it. It's with Venezuela thing, there is once again it highlights the nature of this administration, because if you take the face value of what those guys are saying, oil, we need more oil, you know, like, where's oil and where is international law, and that's disastrous for international law. At the same time, I personally, I am very glad what happened to Maduro, because this guy is a bloody dictator. He usurped power. He violated his own laws inside the country. And no, no, you may say you may say so, but in the situation of dictatorship, I personally stand on the position that intervention, if it is limited to the change of power and removing the dictatorship, I think is a good thing, even if it was motivated with some other ideas. So to this sense, I support what happened to Maduro. But when I mentioned this, I meant something different. I say that this is a result of a brilliant planning and probably spending significant cash, to bribe certain guys, not not to resist. But nevertheless, after this, uh, uh, but as always with Trump, uh, ideological concerns are always secondary, and that's why again we need to look at the bottom line. Trump is Trump, Vance is Vance. They're different, in their logic, and I don't think that Trump has any ideology. He's just playing with different constructs. Yeah, yeah. No, it's like, yeah. That's, by the way, that makes him in this sense similar to Putin. Because Putin is also playing with ideological constructs without seriously meaning them. It's like postmodernism in the global politics. And what I am 100% convinced of is that it was exactly because of this success they didn't intervene in Iran, which they were ready to do. Yes, they were afraid that they may fail. And after that success, this failure would totally offset the success, and that would result in a major PR disaster internally in the United States. And again, you know, you, one can say it's bad, one can say it's good, but that's the way things are, and we just need to take them into account when we plan. And that's why I think that we are not seeing a military invasion to Greenland in any foreseeable agenda. Yes, I see this like you, and then it was you, and then
you said about Republican or especially Trump being isolationist, but do you think that he might be trying to reduce the role of American industrial complex by keeping Russia and Ukraine together? Because if it's one country, it's strong, it can compete with America. Competing with America mean Trump can reduce defense budget for future because American industrial complex won't be that busy. Any weak country, see, you can see my question coming from India, Pakistan. I think that Harry Truman or Churchill broke India into two pieces because they wanted to fight a war with Soviet Union, USSR from Pakistani land. Indian are too nationalist to allow Russia or CIA to play or fool around with USSR from Indian ground. So these people, Harry Truman and Churchill, they broke India into two pieces and they used Pakistan. And Pakistan is a kind of political prostitute. It's my country, but that is reality of life. And I perceive that if you guys become independent, CIA, American Industrial Complex, would play the same role to make you guys fighting and keep you weak. So from USSR, it became Russia, and from Russia, it can become very lot of pieces. It can break. Maybe Putin is keeping it together, but if they come many countries, they would spend a lot of money on weapons with fighting each other, but fooling around with other nations. So do you think Trump is doing smart thing by being isolationist and not potentially wasting a lot of American money in that part of the world by making USSR, Russia, weaker by dividing it pieces? Thank you very much.
Thank you for this question. It's actually, you are calling for new philosophical heights of our discussion. You see, I think what is really has gone in the international politics is this like typical approach of the 20th century of just like straightforward divide and conquer. I think that the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, this horrible war, actually highlights a different conflict. One can say that it's the same thing, just a different angle of view, but nevertheless, I think that's what many people are saying, that it's a conflict between the world based on rules and the world based on force. This is the conflict. Because this divide and conquer exists in the world that is based just on force. And then when it is just on force, then you care about different forces colliding with each other as like your allies uniting around you and your enemies being more fractured. And that's how you play, and that's what British were so perfect at. What you brought the example of India and Pakistan and other parts of Greater India under British Empire. But I don't think it's still the case. I think that right now is like, and that started in the 90s after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Obviously, it was also a very hypocritical concept of the world which is based on rules. Because if there are rules, then it needs to be somebody who decides who is playing by rules and who is not playing by rules. If you are defining the rules, you need to set up a court. There is no court. And No. The International Criminal Court also is not trying the nations, is not trying the governments, it's trying the individuals. And not everybody recognizes its rule, and the major powers are not recognizing the rule, the authority of the court. And even the UN Security Council, the way it's built, it's also, it doesn't look like a neutral body, right? So that's why there is no court. If there is no court, there are no rules. Laws are irrevocably linked to the issue of court and the issue of judge. And the enforcement, even like second, I 100% agree. I 100% agree. That's why the whole concept of the world based on rules is hypocritical. Because it's still a world which is based on force, but that force which defines the rules. And that's what Putin is saying so often, pointing out to this hypocrisy, and in this he's 100% right. I here agree with him that it's a hypocrisy. But my view is that Putin's answer to this is let's just forget about the world which is based on rules and play by force, My answer is I like to have a world which is based by rules, but I want to make the next step and have those bodies which would actually enforce the rules. But that's like who wants what for himself, right? But I think that this approach that like Russia and Ukraine is fighting and that it's orchestrated by some global conspiracy. We just wanted those guys to fight with each other so that Russia becomes weaker and at the end of the day would collapse, you know, and that, you know, some significant player would be eliminated. There is no conspiracy. You know, I would respect this world more if such conspiracy would actually be possible, but it's not. We saw this many times, you know, that there is no global conspiracy. There are interests, but they always very much short-living, short-sighted, and they're easy to track. Everything which is complex is not working, which is also bad. But it is the fact of our life. And again, for this, I am very thankful for Mr. Trump that he actually highlights this, and he actually provokes us to actually start thinking about this. What would happen next in the world, I don't know, because right now there is many people would be saying, and I myself think that's a very high probability, that this administration would be superseded by the administration of Vance, and Vance is genuinely an isolationist. To the contrary to Trump, this guy has ideas. We may agree to them, do not agree to them, but I think that he would be way more consistent ideologically in what he does. But I fear this because if it would generate even larger vacuum of power worldwide, that we may just see more wars coming, and it can be with you know, in Southeast Asia, not necessarily just Taiwan. By the way, it can be more wars in Europe with Russia, and also not just Ukraine, but the Baltic states and Poland. It can be in Central Asia. It's very much possible that if Putin is not stopped and not removed from power, he can go after Kazakhstan, for example. It can be between India and Pakistan easily. So it can lead to a global destabilization. And we are yet to see what's going on. And like returning to the issue of Davos, I think it was so much visible. So it really makes people think.
Are there more Russian or Ukrainian who lost their lives in this war, or there were more Russians who lost their war in Afghanistan? If you think those numbers, the people who lost their valuable lives are comparable, West is already winning. American industrial complex is already winning.
I think that it's incomparable with what's going on now and what was going on in Afghanistan, because Russia is losing twice as many people in the whole of Afghanistan war in 1 month. So all of the Afghanistan campaign is just 2 weeks. All of that. And the Afghanistan campaign played a crucial role in defeating Soviet Union in general and the collapse of the country. It's just a different thing and different structures. Right now, it's actually if you would calculate, it's a cynical word, I don't like to use it, but nevertheless, efficiency of fighting during World War II and in Russia-Ukraine war, you would see that the Russian army in Ukraine is almost 10 times less efficient than it was in World War II. And if you compare, you know, territorial gains, number of kills, you know, losses, like all this math of war, then you would see that World War II, with all the disastrous losses in the beginning of the war for the Soviet Union, it was way more efficient military campaign than it is right now for Russia, this Ukraine campaign. And we are like touching a different subject, but the recent operation in Kupiansk in Ukraine. You know the ratio of losses between Ukrainian army and Russian army during Kupiansk operation? It's 1 to 27. It's 1 to 27. So, and that's something which doesn't bother Putin at all, because he thinks that he is sending some street scum, the most poorest, you know, unimportant people to the war, and that actually lifts them off the state budget, you know, with all the subsidies, social care, whatever, you know, cleans up the prisons. So they again cynically say, okay, Ukrainians just exterminate our problem. And that's why nobody is rebelling against. But let's move, you know, so it was, first it was you, then you, then, yes, and then you, and then you, yes. I'm sorry. The mic.
Thanks a lot.
The mic needs to be heard, you know, by our audience.
Sure. I agree with what you just said about Ukraine and Putin. Also, my question is, did you pay the $51,000 to get in?
Am I crazy? It's my 11 to 12 Davos. I didn't play a dime to those bastards, you know. This.
Yeah, but where I do have a bit of a problem is I think you have a little bit of a benign attitude to Trump. When you really think what Trump has done or is doing recently, he claimed territory of an ally, Canada, Greenland, Panama. I think any American president who says, I would like the country of a neighboring country, a friend even worse than an enemy, this is totally like a police state. That is like Stalin. That is not we should even make jokes about or not take seriously. This is such a general violation of anything the Western world democracy is standing for. So I think we should really see how terrible that claim is. And also Venezuela, I agree, Maduro is a terrible guy, was a terrible guy. But if we take out any terrible guy in the world, this is jungle warfare. You know, why doesn't Putin then try to take out the German chancellor? Because he doesn't like him, for example. We cannot go around the world only because the US is the strongest power in the world to take out foreign leaders, even if we don't like them. And I think that doesn't really come across here, that there is a major problem with that sort of approach to power politics. We need rule of laws, global law. We need also human rights to be observed. After all, you know, quite a few hundred people got killed when the United States took out extra, what is the word, kidnapped or whatever, Maduro. And, you know, no one talks about these victims. And we are not at war with Venezuela. If there was a war situation, the United States being like was at the time Nazi Germany being at war, that's a different situation. So I think to make jokes about Trump's international behavior, which is totally atrocious, I think we should be really careful about. Thank you.
No, I agree with what you just said. That let's elaborate a little bit. Firstly, I definitely don't like the idea of one nation intervening in the internal affairs of another nation. And it doesn't matter, you know, whether we like or don't like, it's a bad idea. But I think there, again, if we are talking about this international law, international rules, the world based on the rules, that, and it's very bad that these rules are largely unwritten, because what is written in the UN Charter is a very short, abridged version of those rules, which could be in place. I don't know whether we should take them, but I am all for the international criminal code, so to say, where it's written what can and cannot be done. But if it would be one day written, I would be for putting there a clause that if the leader of the country is considered illegitimate by the majority of nations in the world, then he would become a legitimate target for any of the nations to remove. I personally would be for it. because I think that there are many cases when people from within cannot remove the illegitimate dictatorship leader, and in almost all cases, those dictatorships, they eventually lead to a larger bloodshed, not just internally, but at best with immediate neighbors, but in many cases like beyond immediate neighbors. To prevent this cancerous thing to grow, I think that this intervention, based on rules, if there are such rules, I think would be justified, and that's why I said that I support the operation of Maduro as much as I would support the operation to remove Putin, because Putin is also by international community is rendered illegitimate. There were decisions by European Parliament on this, by US Congress on this, by many other international bodies that he is illegitimate, that he usurped power, and I would be for.
But if the United States goes into Venezuela, a sovereign nation state, it seems to me okay. I don't think it's okay. Both is terrible, and both are bad ideas. We cannot say because we don't like Putin, so it's wrong what he's doing, and we don't like Maduro, so it's okay again. Take him out.
No, yes.
We need to observe global law neutrally, not because we like or dislike leaders.
No, I totally see your point, and that's why I stressed in many cases there could be leaders that somebody likes and somebody dislikes, and it's a question of like ideological positions of those guys. It's a question of international alliances. It's very selfic economic interests, natural resources like others. So there are. But I think there should be particular cases when those people can be legitimate. Just you and he's a legitimate target. Okay, maybe I misunderstood it.
Putin's invasion of Ukraine is totally illegal and people know. But then we shouldn't invade Venezuela, and suddenly that is right.
No, but you are now merging two different cases. Let's separate them. If Putin legal to remove physically Putin, there's a okay. So maybe for you personally, no. For me, definitely yes. But and the question is that Russia is at war with Ukraine. So does it mean that it's only Ukraine can remove Putin because those two countries are at war, or it can be a third country which can remove Putin because Putin violated the international law by invading to Ukraine. Again, it's a question. We define the law. That's what I'm saying, is that the whole thing about this international rules is very vague. And me being a parliamentarian, I like things to be written down. And I personally, if there would be this global parliament who votes for certain pieces of international legislation, I definitely would propose that, if Putin invades Ukraine, that makes him a legitimate target for everyone, not just for Ukraine. And I definitely there would put a clause if somebody is recognized as an usurper of power based on his internal laws, that he became a dictator on his internal laws, in the sense of his internal laws. And Maduro is the case, because Maduro, you can say that Trump did it because of the oil, as he himself claims. But Maduro was recognized internationally as the usurper of power. It was voted for by many nations, the majority of nations. And there was another leader who was recognized by international community as the legitimate leader, of Ukraine, Mr. Guaido. You know, so in this situation, as there is an internationally recognized leader and there is an usurper of power, I personally think that to remove the usurper of power is legal. But where I would agree with you is that it's not written anywhere.
We need to discuss it.
Yeah. Okay. But again, that's my position. So it was a question. Firstly, it was you, and then it goes to you. The mic.
I just want to preface question with 2 points there. So to your point, and just the debate that's brewing here, that ask any constitutional court in the world, any nation state, and they'll tell you nothing is really absolute. As in, there are limits, there are exceptions. Like ask any constitutional court. And secondly, would be just another preface is just advising, don't read all that much into Trump. He does not read books. He's proudly ignorant. He does things for himself. Don't read too much in his motives. Now to the question, and you're mentioning the dynamics, like Davos, we see this war of narrative there. It's pretty clear.
Mm-hmm.
So now, how might Ukraine, like especially like Ukraine and any other like-minded countries who are in support of national rules-based order, how might Ukraine either claim or even not claim, but maintain, despite efforts of contrary, both by Mr. Putin and Mr. Trump, just command of the narrative? Because exactly 1 year ago, shortly after, how so many here in the States, this was back in November, December 2024, they were just willing to just write off Ukraine entirely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's from this mindset from I see, especially here in the US, and it's so easy, not just the US, but also Russia, also China, that thinking that the only actors that are important are those great powers, while overlooking the agency of those so-called middle powers, that they have autonomy, they're sovereign, they have agency. So how might, say, not just from Ukraine, but those like-minded around the world, especially those in Europe, even a good plurality of people here in the US, for example, help support maintaining that narrative? There's autonomy. It's almost like what Benjamin Tallis of the Royal United Service Institute calls neo-idealism that the Baltics and many in Eastern Europe espouse.
Thank you very much for the great question. Again, you know, it's very hard for a person who is engaged in public politics to be too cynical, but I am. I think that's only things which are fundamentally based on the deeply recognized interests are sustainable. And all the rest, like this humanitarian stuff, you know, what is right, what is wrong, you know, the values, and everything, this is something that politicians always gamble with, use it to their own benefit, but then throw it away as soon as it becomes not so profitable for them. And for me, it was quite clear, and that's what I was saying all the time inside Ukraine, that if Ukraine would not offer others an explanation why it needs to be helped, and we just say about, you know, all the right things, that it's against the international law, that it's a crime, genocide, it's like this and that, you know, then the support to Ukraine would eventually wane. But I think that in Europe, quietly, gradually, over time, is very long and very painful for years, this transformation has actually happened. Ukrainian politicians all the time, they like to say that we, Ukraine, is the dam which protects you from the flood which is coming from the east. Exterminated, if we fall. And all the European politicians always say, don't pull our leg, like, yeah, you always, it's a globe of Ukraine, you want to be in the center, but you are not. Yes, we are willing to. It's awful, it's disastrous, but whatever. Ukrainians, nevertheless, for many Europeans, nevertheless, it was more a humanitarian thing rather than something which is their core interest. Yeah. I think that by 2026, it's no longer the case. By 2026, I think that Europeans do understand that if Ukraine falls, then they're next. I think they do understand and would not stop. Believe this, they think that the threat is too high. And that's why it's easier and safer to give some more money to Ukraine European politicians, and in this Davos it was like seen full scale. I think Europe has started preparing for the war. Some countries like far away was more relaxed all the time away to ignore this question completely, and even again if the war would not spill to their immediate territory, that for them it is a strategic challenge and strategic leverage over Eastern Europe, and that they need to be engaged. That's why I think the situation has fundamentally changed, and that's why I don't think that Ukraine would be abandoned anytime soon. I think that right now for Ukraine, the situation is extremely stable in terms of economic support. The situation at the front lines is also stabilized after a certain crisis, which we saw during 2025, which was related to the lack of people in the army, but with the growth of the technological output of Ukrainian defense companies, right now the situation is kind of balanced, and military-wise, we are not afraid that the front would collapse, and we're absolutely certain that with the resources already committed from Europe, that we can sustain fighting. Please pass the mic. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good.
Hi all. Good evening all. My name is Pawan. I do have a couple of questions. I think once President Trump's favorite word is tariff and economic sanctions. So I think these are the two words. So, but I'm not going to talk about Greenland or any of those. So I think I want to talk about, ask about UN. So US withdrawing from UN, that's one. Another one is he's propping up a board called Board of Peace or Department of Peace or whatever the jazz is. One of the fundamental shift there is Canada withdrawing the invitation to Canada and asking $1 billion from other countries to contribute. Do you think this Board of Peace will succeed, or what is their notion? And I'll follow up with another question after this, your comment on it. And what was the gossip talk around for Board of Peace? Will UN collapse, or is there anything else? Because UN is studying, someone is the one who's setting up this charter, like, yeah, the Geneva Charter, or it is pretty much in there. So I want to know your thoughts on it, please.
I, frankly speaking, think that in a relatively short period of time, we will not remember what the Board of Peace was. I don't see it sustainable. And I don't think that President Trump should try to play in the areas where he is not that strong. He is strong as in unilateral actions. And I personally think that the whole story with tariffs, can be played in the skillful hands and could be beneficial for the United States. And I think that so far it actually was, despite all the problems that that was surrounding it. But it's better for Americans to judge. But I don't think that Trump would ever be able to create something multilateral. I just don't think that's in his personal DNA. And I think that this example of this Board of Peace, Council of Peace, whatever it's called, would actually demonstrate this to him, and he would never return to similar ideas in the future. As much as I want United Nations to be fundamentally reformed, as what I was saying, you probably understood that I'm all for creating a new international order based on certain rules which are defined, written, supported by certain organizations in a democratic manner, with the possibility to individual nations to vote, to decide things collectively, to defend collectively, to have international peace forces and all this kind of stuff. But I don't think it would happen under Trump's administration.
And I think this is a little bit of off topic, but it's related to Davos. I've read it in the news. I've seen in the news that I don't know if I'm embarrassed to ask it, but I probably want to ask it still. So, what do you think about? Is there a truth of adult entertainers being a lot more prevalent in that particular area of town when this event happens?
Frankly speaking, that was probably the least, adult industry exposure. And because I, as you understand, I've been in many international forums of the large scale. Yeah. And I would see that the maximum is at St. Petersburg. And some security.
Is a lot more prevalent than what news channels advertise or tell?
No, you see, in Davos, you're getting so much tired during the day. Yeah. So it's it's not something that you are looking for, and probably there are such people, but I can tell you they are not visible at all. Not visible at all. Always, this prostitution happens at this international venues, and there are a lot of people with very deep pockets here. But even like technically, if like you're in this business, you need to rent some space for yourself, and the prices for very lousy rooms in Davos during this period of time, they start at $5,000 a night. So it's just uneconomical.
Thank you. Thanks for this. Sorry for this.
Thanks for the funny questions.
Yeah, I don't know how to follow that line of discussion. So back to some more mundane stuff. So it was really fascinating, Ilya, how you described the change of perception of Ukraine from being a victim that needs to be helped to somebody whom to discuss security and defense with. Really interesting. In the past, I was in Davos a few times myself, and I remember when I was there, Russia was front and center. It was just very, it was full of Russians. I remember Sechin was there, Gref was there, Shuvalov was there, half the government was there, all the oligarchs were there, everybody. And then so much discussion was centered on Russia as well. So now, I just looked this year, all the webcasts. There was one panel session on Russia a couple of hours before Trump about Russian economy. And people discussing the Russian economy were Moldovan Prime Minister, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya of Russia and Romanian foreign minister. Yeah. Oh, sorry, of Belarus. Svetlana Tikhanovskaya of Belarus and yeah, and Romanian foreign minister.
Yeah.
So what is the talk and the perception of Russia? Is Putin relevant in Davos? Is Russia relevant? And or is it more attention to, you know, what's happened across the border from Russia, like those countries like Moldova, Belarus, and really how much of the attention to those countries as well?
Who is Mr. Putin? That was the question that was asked at Davos. Yeah. By the way, by U.S. Journalist from Philadelphia. Yes. Very nice one. You see, I would say that obviously Russia is a major factor. You know, so because it's a geopolitical factor, it's a security factor, and still Davos being a very global venue, just by geographical reasons, it's dominated by Europeans, and all Europeans, they are thinking about Putin and what would happen next. But I would say that like immediate involvement of Russia right now is literally minimal. I'll tell you a personal story. I actually posted about it on Facebook. Back in the days, I think it was in the year 2009, I was elected. It's called Young Global Leaders. It's this organization. Davos. It's like it was started as just a forum, and then it grew up in a certain organization. So there is a certain panel of thinkers. And then there is like a youth organization of like promising rising stars, and every country elects those leaders, which are then being supported by World Economic Forum leadership, and they create certain interim events between these global sessions in Davos. They make reports with like a global think tank, and a very prestigious organization. Young Global Leaders is a fantastically prestigious organization. So I was elected to be the Young Global Leader of Russia by popular vote. So it was a democratic process. And Mr. Schwab, who was the founder of Davos, founder of World Economic Forum, personally crossed my name out and said he would never allow me to end Davos. And the reason was that I'm anti-Putin. And it was very funny because at that time I was President Medvedev's advisor. And it was one of closest associates of Medvedev who personally called Schwab and said, like, what the hell, he wasn't elected and he's our guy, like. And Schwab said, no, you can tell whatever you want to tell. I know that he's anti-Putin, so he would never be allowed here. That's one of the reasons why I never paid the fee to Davos, so thank you, Mr. Schwab. But that basically gives you an idea how tainted was the whole leadership of World Economic Forum towards not just abstract Russia, but in particular Putin's administration. They were paying huge money to World Economic Forum to make sure that they are loyal and that there is a special relations. I don't believe that there is any other country in the world which actually invested on the national level to create a special relationship in Davos. And every time a Russian house in Davos, it was caviar, it was vodka, it was like, so it was this special ladies, servicing. But after Russia is gone, no more ladies, no more caviar, vodka still exists, but not to that quantity. So things changed, and Schwab also out. So now is Davos without Schwab. And I don't see much of Russia. And obviously because of sanctions and everything, there is no longer a Russia house. For many years, physically, Russia house was in front of Ukrainian house in Davos. It was very funny, it was like, so watching standing on duty in front of Ukrainian house and see all those guys coming in and come here. But it's no longer the case. And I see that this Russian spirit fortunately or unfortunately, is out of Davos for a moment. The ghost is there, but the spirit is not.
I mean, Kirill Dmitriev was a ghost.
Yeah, it was probably the only Russia. Kirill was always there in the past, you know, but this time there's space. Please take the mic, please.
As we look at what happened in Venezuela, where the U.S. intervened not for regime change, but simply to decapitate the leader and use economic coercion to basically create a vassal state. One of the questions I have is about what Russia's tactics or strategy might be in the year ahead, because it doesn't appear that they're trying actually to gain a lot of territory. They're utilizing airstrikes, artillery strikes to basically decimate the infrastructure, the energy infrastructure, the transport infrastructure, and could they be trying to do something like what we did with Venezuela? And I'm not saying they have to send in Spetsnaz forces to kidnap Zelensky, but to pulverize the state so the population doesn't support Zelensky anymore, and you get a change in leadership, and Ukraine becomes basically a vassal state like Belarus. Is that something that the Russians might be trying to do? Because after 4 years, they've only captured 20% of Ukraine. So I really don't see how, you know, Germany and Poland and these other countries are worried that they're going to get defeated by Russia. 4 years in World War II, they'd taken Berlin. So they obviously, as you pointed out, haven't been nearly as efficient in their firepower and in their territorial conquest as they had before. So I'd be interested in your views on, you know, the Russian leadership. What are they thinking about? How can they achieve their objective without capturing more territory and expending more of their manpower after they've already lost over 1 million dead and wounded? Thank you.
Well, I would start answering with a popular Ukrainian joke, which actually emerged in the year of 2022, so quite a long time ago. Why Russians are not making attacks on the decision-making centers of Ukraine, because they understand that that would increase the strength of Ukrainian army. So I don't think that they would actually manage to pull out an attack on personally Zelensky or anybody else inside Ukraine, and I don't think they are planning one. And I don't think it's possible, you know, because the Ukrainian security forces are really good. So to kill Zelensky, you know, most likely they can with some like really heavy attack if they would know for sure his whereabouts, you know, maybe, you know, somebody like Oreshnik, I don't know, maybe it's possible. And they tried several times something minor, but nothing of a large scale. And then if anyway, that would not change nothing, you know, because for Ukraine it's a great patriotic war. And it's for Russia, it's an imperialistic, you know, attack, you know, when ordinary Russians do not understand what they are fighting for, just for money. Like for Ukraine, it really doesn't matter who is at the helm. There would be another Zelensky, you know, anybody would do the same job at the moment. Zelensky played key role. I don't want to undermine him at all. You know, he's a fantastic person, and I really like him personally. But his main role was in the beginning of war, where he didn't run away, when he said that we will stand up and fight. You know, and he inspired the nation and gave Ukrainian army enough time to consolidate and to fight back. Right now, already it doesn't matter who is the president of the country, really, you know, in this sense. So I don't think that Putin is stupid not to understand this. You know, maybe as to capture Zelensky, you know, could be a popular move inside Russia, but it would not change the bottom line at the field of battle. And at the field of battle, I also don't think that Putin is that stupid not to understand that there is no military way how Ukraine can be defeated. He is fighting the war of attrition. That's quite clear. That he is investing a lot in the military production inside Russia. Army is gradually learning. We shouldn't underestimate Russian army is stupid. It's not stupid. It's just very rigid. That's the problem of Russian army. And even the military innovations, it's the same thing. They also happen in Russia a lot. Not just in Ukraine. They also happen. It's just also they are more rigid than in Russia. It's easier for Russian industry to have a dozen of military startups, but every startup is producing millions in quantity of those drones than what is in Ukraine, where we have 6,000 startups. It's just the nature how things are and what's the ecosystem looks like. Alas, what we were building together with you back in the days in Russia, there are remnants of this. And some of the people whom we, together with you, were supporting, they are right now producing arms for the Russian army, but fortunately not the majority of them. Majority of them left. But some of them do. The guy who is running the facility in Yelabuga, who is producing Shaheds, I took part in appointing him back in the days as one of the successful industrial zones of that part under Skolkovo umbrella, alas. But nevertheless, they are not efficient because they are rigid. But besides that, going for Putin is actually to make a deal. And I think that he has plan A and plan B. And his plan A most likely to continue fighting and just wait until Ukraine dies by itself, when Europeans would become saturated, fed with this war, and say, we should stop it, maybe he understands it will not happen in 2026 and maybe not in 2027, but maybe he hopes in 2028 that would happen. But still, I think that quite close to plan A, there is a plan B that he would be able to negotiate with President Trump, and President Trump would force President Zelensky, and Europeans also would fall into the same thing, that he can at least claim his ownership over the Donetsk region, being able to say that that's what we wanted originally from the very beginning, and that's it. But that would open another both problem and an opportunity for him, because from one side, he, bad word, but that's what has been utilized a lot of these criminals in Russia, and a lot of people from these marginal circles. So he decreased the criminal threat, but at the same time he created a new guild of people who have military experience. Overwhelming majority of people who are fighting in the front lines on the Russian side, they hate Putin and hate Moscow and hate the generals. So he cannot afford to let them come back home. That means that he would start another war. And that's the reason why I'm saying, while Putin still exists, the war would continue. There's no way out already. No way out. First, let's go there because you didn't ask the question yet, and then it will continue.
So, Ukraine's, over the last year especially, Ukraine has made significant strikes on Russia's oil infrastructure. And it seems, at least to me, that those strikes have been extremely effective. How do you think the world is responding now, making new deals, making new trades, in response to those strikes? Because this is a much longer term thing and the shock is no longer there, I guess.
First of all, you know, as much as I liked the pictures on the refineries and were proud of particular drones companies that were producing those drones which hit those refineries, I would not overestimate the effectiveness of those attacks. Yeah, obviously it created significant losses for particular oil companies, which were the operators of those refineries. But it did not create any fundamental problems with the supply, even to internal market, not speaking about the exports. I wouldn't downplay this also, you know, the impact was there. But it was not a game changer. To me, the attacks that I personally advocated from 2022, 2023, when we got the maritime drones in Ukraine, that attack should be targeted against tankers. Now it's called Shadow Fleet. At the time, it was not even a Shadow Fleet, but now it is a Shadow Fleet. My rationale was that by disrupting the trade routes, even small number of tankers being physically hit would create a large degree of uncertainty, would balloon the insurances, would make the buyers to think twice before buying Russian oil, because it's not so reliable. You would never know whether it would be hit or not hit, where it would be delivered. And we saw, like, with just less than a handful of attacks, that actually that produced a similar effect on all of the attacks on all of the refineries inside Russia. And I think that actually Ukraine realized this right now. Because while we didn't do these attacks before, is because of Biden's administration. That's the only reason. It's not because Ukraine was stupid. It's because we were explicitly prohibited against this attack by Mr. Sullivan, you know, Mr. Burns, and you know, all that gang which existed there. But now, because there is no restriction, this administration says, okay, you know, the war is war. You know, comme à la guerre, you know, so you fight, you know, you do whatever you. They are fighting, they are hitting, you know, and you are hitting. So the impact is there, and that's why Zelensky is calling on Europeans to finally start putting a rest on those tankers of the Shadow Fleet, which Europeans definitely can do, because they also control the straits in Denmark, so it's not just Turkey. And they are not regulated by Montreal agreements like with Turkey, which prohibits. There is no such strict regulation, but Europeans are reluctant to do it. But that's why Zelensky is so much pushing forward towards this kind of this kind of measures. Whether they would materialize at the end of the day, I don't know. Again, like, Europeans are extremely slow and bureaucratic and whatever, so I tend to think that probably not. But maybe one day we will see some of the Nordic countries that would allow Ukrainians to place their maritime unmanned boats in the Baltics, and then, you know, forget about Europeans. We can take the situation by ourselves.
Well, and good you mentioned the Shaheds so from Iran, and following that, we're starting to see a similar pattern with how Trump administration, what they did with Venezuela, that months in advance, starting to move ships, carriers, naval assets further in the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. Starting to see that same pattern now with the Mediterranean, as in closer to Israel, those places. So could be a few further months, but sensing some pattern there. So now the question is that, how do you see the dynamics changing? So how would Ukraine best exploit its advantage? Let's say if the regime in Iran does end up collapsing, whether through internal pressures or gets taken out in a similar manner, whether it's Israeli or US, like, how could Ukraine best exploit that potential advantage offers because one of the biggest suppliers of equipment to Russia right now is Iran. And number two, the wild card there is Israel. That Netanyahu, he's been trying to play both sides for years. Still trying to maintain relations with Russia. And apparently they might realize it, but it's like, well, it's quite closely interconnected because, of course, he also sees Iran as an existential threat. So I mean, it's hard to associate to. Like, hard to play both sides if you're facing an existential threat from a Russian supplier in the form of Iran. So let's say, in the event, whatever happens in the regime, what falls, regardless of what happens in Iran afterwards, whatever the denouement of the collapse of the Iranian regime causes, how might really Ukraine best exploit advantage? And where do you see Ukraine best positioning itself vis-a-vis Israel on that side?
You know, another good question, but this time it's extremely hard to answer it. Ukraine tries to use the events in the Middle East to its advantage, but it's really hard to do because, like, Ukraine allied with Turkey, but Turkey at the same time is allied with Russia, not just with Ukraine. Although it's leaning more towards Ukraine than towards Russia, but nevertheless, you know, they kind of swing both ways. It could be possible to affect Iran using Kurds, but they're against Turkey, you know, so you cannot engage with Kurds as easily because, you know, you cannot say, you know, you're fighting that direction, but you're not fighting this direction. Israelis, as you correctly said, from one side, they also kind of swing both ways. They're not so much pro-Russian, but, you know, there are numerous potential leaks to Russia. But also, we shouldn't underestimate technological risks, as like Ukrainian defense producers, defense manufacturers, which could help Israel. And not that enthusiastic in working with Israelis because they're afraid of technological leaks, and that Israelis being technologically capable, that they would start stealing the technology and using it for themselves. That's why kind of, you know, yeah, a lot of like personal connections there, but, you know, hard to do. There is, you didn't mention, there's a factor of Syria, and that's where some of the private military groups associated with Ukraine are active, especially after the change of the regime and before the change of the regimes. And with Turks, you know, there was certain cooperation. With Israelis was a certain cooperation, but still they had to do more by themselves because, like, they cannot get too much in bed with neither Turks nor
There's also
Israelis.
Kurds exposure to
And also
Kurds and Turkey.
Yeah, so it's like this. So it's very delicate fabric where you need to be extremely careful. The remaining factor is Azerbaijan, which is an adversary to the modern Iran, and they have ethnical things inside Iran, which, you know, plays in the contradictions between the countries. And Ukraine managed to play some of the Azerbaijani cards to its benefit. Azerbaijan is a major investor in Ukraine's economy, and there is certain technological cooperation, but also there are so many potential leaks. There is such a great degree of infiltration by Russia into Azerbaijan that we have to be very careful there.
And Armenia as well with that.
Armenia to Ukraine is not an ally. It's despite that, you know, like culture and whatever, it could be one, but by tradition, Ukraine is way more engaged with Azerbaijan than it does with Armenia.
All right. Curiosity based upon your time in Davos. Sorry I came in a little bit late. I was also remembering a few stories about how Russia was trying to circumvent economic sanctions by using barter. I think they traded it was like chickpeas or kumquats or something with Pakistan one time. And there's also rumors that they're trying to use cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin and Ether in order to circumvent. Based upon your time in Davos, based upon what you've been reading and what your colleagues have been saying, do you think that barter and crypto will continue to go up as circumvention methods, or do you think that they are actually becoming outdated and there's more there are just alternate methods that are more popular now?
Well, it's not that I am directly engaged in this matter, but to my knowledge, crypto is the most convenient way how to do it, and I don't see any reason why its popularity in this sense should decline. There are a lot of Russia is also using a lot in and you also should not underestimate such a hard currency as cocaine, which in some particular issues is also being used, unfortunately. But it's not obviously as popular as crypto. Crypto is the easiest, and Russia controls a lot in this area, and Ether that you mentioned is Russian product. So unfortunately, it would remain a very tangible and very easy to use way to circumvent any restrictions on financial flows.
Thank you.
Okay, probably you got tired of me already, so let's go have some drinks and continue there. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for coming. And I have a small announcement. Thank you very much. As a small announcement, next week we have an important event. Our Chairman of Board of Trustees, Mr. here, so February 6th. Please come. It would be interesting. It's a great guy, very inspiring, historical figure, and is a true friend of this house. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, that's been 2 weeks. Yes, February 6th. February 6th. As you see, time is being covered. But yeah, on the 30th of January also we have an interesting discussion about Venezuela, I believe. Yes.
Sorry I missed your talk. I wanted to be here, but I had to take I take care of my mom. Her aide was sick.
I understand.
So I needed to pitch hit for.
No worries, no worries. No worries. I'm glad to be connected with you. Glad to know that you were able to come here tonight and that you thought of me.
Yeah, and I know it's on video. So.
Yes, yes. It's on video. Definitely good because I was here as an audience member, but however, it was also kind of fun to be on the other side for that evening.
Yeah. And I have a friend who's from Hong Kong, his family. I sent him your he's very interested in that. So.
Thank you for that. I'm glad. I appreciate you spreading the message.
Yeah. How was it?
It was definitely packed. More than usual, they really put this down.